Good evening, friends. In the last session, we have discussed about the cerebellum. It was interesting topic. Today, very important topic called as sulci and gyri of brain. Most important and interesting if you listen very carefully and with interest. So, this is the brain. So, sagittal section of brain, and this is supralateral surface. Supralateral surface. This part. So this full part is called supralateral surface, and this pole is called frontal pole. This pointing pole is called as occipital pole. You can see this cerebellum, so towards that is called occipital pole, and the opposite is frontal pole, and this pole is called temporal pole. This pole. So if you come to the inferior surface, there is an lateral sulcus. Root of lateral sulcus divides the inferior surface into orbital surface and tentorial surface. Okay, towards the cerebellum is called tentorial, and next part is called orbital surface. So as we saw here, the lateral sulcus, its root, from their branches you will get this. That is, from the lateral sulcus you will get another sulcus called anterior horizontal sulcus, and another sulcus here is called anterior ascending, and this large sulcus is called posterior ramus from the lateral sulcus. You understood? This is anterior horizontal, this is anterior ascending, this is posterior ramus, all from the lateral sulcus. This is supralateral surface. Full is called supralateral surface. Here you can see this continuous sulcus. I think you can see here this continuous. There is no restriction. Here you can see the restriction, here you can see the restriction, here restriction, here there is continuous. This is called central sulcus. Very important. It goes forward and downwards and end at the posterior ramus of lateral sulcus. See, you can see this was from below here, this was a root of lateral sulcus, this was anterior horizontal, this was root, this was anterior horizontal, this was anterior ascending, and this was posterior sulcus. See, this was posterior, this is central. Central goes downwards and forward and reaches the posterior ramus of the lateral sulcus. I think understood. So this here, there is a notch like structure called as pre-occipital notch. So draw a imaginary vertical line at the pre-occipital notch, and draw a horizontal oblique line at the posterior ramus and vertical line at the pre-occipital notch. You can divide into 4 lobes of supralateral surface. 4 lobes. See, this was central sulcus and this is posterior sulcus. See, front of the central sulcus and above the posterior sulcus you can see a lobe. This lobe is called as frontal lobe, front of central sulcus and above the posterior ramus. So after dividing this, you can divide, after dividing this imaginary line, Again you can divide into 3 lobe, 1 2 3. Let's see it. This part is called as temporal lobe. This part is called occipital lobe, and this part is called parietal lobe. Okay, so in the this is a medial surface, medial, not medial, it's medial, not median. Medial surface, medial surface is there is a sulcus called parieto-occipital sulcus, because this part is occipital part, this is parietal part, there is a sulcus. Name only says that parieto-occipital sulcus. Medial surface. Okay, again coming to the supralateral surface. This part is very important, listen very carefully. Here there we said, what is this? All of you say, what is this? Central sulcus. In front of central sulcus there is another sulcus. This is called as precentral sulcus. Front means pre means front. Precentral sulcus. Okay, between the central sulcus and precentral sulcus, this is called precentral gyri. Understood? Okay, now in the frontal lobe, frontal part, you can see a sulcus here. It's called superofrontal sulcus. Here another is sulcus is seen, inferofrontal sulcus. These both divide into first part, second part, third part. It divides, the frontal lobe is divided again into 3 parts: superior frontal gyri, middle frontal gyri, and inferior frontal gyri. This is superior frontal gyri, middle frontal gyri, and inferior frontal gyri. Okay, now complexity arises when inferior frontal gyri is further divided into three lobes by the lateral sulci branches. We said, right, 3 branches. What are these? Anterior horizontal, anterior ascending, posterior ramus. By this only the inferior frontal gyri is divided into 3 lobes. Okay, what was this? From the lateral sulcus, there was a lateral sulcus here downwards, and first branch, second branch, and third branch. First branch is called wait a second, increase the brightness. First branch is called anterior horizontal, second is anterior ascending, third is posterior ramus. Divides the inferior frontal gyri into 3 lobes. These are, this is first lobe, this is called pars orbitalis. This is second lobe, called pars triangularis. This is third lobe, called pars opercularis. Okay, by how? See, this is anterior ascending, anterior horizontal, this is anterior ascending. See, anterior horizontal below is called as pars orbitalis. Between the anterior horizontal and anterior ascending, this both is called as pars triangularis. And between the anterior ascending and what is this posterior ramus is called as pars opercularis. Again coming to the what is the supralateral surface. that this was the frontal lobe, frontal part. Here temporal part. This sulcus is called superior temporal sulci. Here below is called inferior temporal sulci. Above it divides the temporal lobe into 3 gyri. Above the superior temporal sulci is called superior temporal gyri, and middle between the superior temporal sulci and inferior temporal sulci is called as middle temporal gyri, and below the inferior temporal sulcus is called as inferior temporal gyri. Again, coming to the supralateral surface only, there was we saw the frontal lobe, we saw the temporal lobe. Now coming to the parietal lobe. Parietal lobe. So here we can see this was central sulcus. In front we said pre, back side what we will say post. Here another sulcus is there. This is called a post central sulcus, and between the central sulcus and the post central sulcus, this is post central gyri. Okay, here in the parietal lobe you can see intraparietal sulcus. This is intraparietal sulcus till here only, which divides the parietal lobe into superior parietal lobule and inferior parietal lobule. Okay, now coming to the occipital part, this sulcus is there here. This is called lateral occipital sulcus, which divides into superior occipital gyri above and below inferior occipital gyri, and another sulci is there here called as a neunate sulcus, which separate the superior and inferior occipital gyri from the occipital pole. We saw beginning that posterior in towards the cerebellum there is a pointing called as occipital pole, that is separated from the superior and inferior occipital gyri. Superior and inferior occipital gyri from the occipital pole by this sulcus called as neunate sulcus. Okay, coming to the medial plane, medial surface. Medial surface, you can see here this part, this sulcus here. This is a cerebellum, towards this is occipital. Here this sulcus is called as calcarean sulcus. Important. And in the supralateral surface we saw the parieto-occipital sulcus, that is continuation here towards the medial surface. This is continuation of parieto-occipital sulci. This is calcarean sulcus. Okay, now here you can see there is a sulci going like this till here called as a cingulate sulci, and below that is there is a gyri called as cingulate gyri, and below that and above the corpus callosum there is another sulcus called as a callosal sulcus between the cingulate gyri and corpus callosum, between the cingulate gyri and corpus callosum. Okay, this is corpus callosum. So you can see the cingulate sulci going upward, and there is an upward projection called as obscure sulcus. Obscure sulcus extends from the cingulate sulcus. Okay, this region is called as a paracentral lobule. Okay, here the calcarean sulci and the parieto-occipital sulci, there is a lobule here between that called as cuneus. Okay, so between the cuneus and the paracentral lobule there is another part called as precuneus, between the paracentral lobule and cuneus. Okay, now this is splenium of corpus callosum, and this is what is this? Calcarean sulcus, anterior part, and this is splenium. Between this there is a part called as isthmus, between the anterior part of calcarean sulcus and splenium is called isthmus. Now coming to inferior surface, starting beginning we saw that it is divided into orbital part and tentorial part by lateral sulcus. Okay, now coming to the orbital part, you can see here a sulcus called as olfactory sulci. In front of that you have a gyri called as gyri rectus. Okay, and another there is a H shape irregular sulci called orbital sulcus. Here it was olfactory sulcus, it is H shape irregular sulcus called as irregular sulcus called as orbital sulcus. This orbital sulcus H shape is divide the orbital lobe into 4 gyri. Above is called as anterior orbital gyri, below is called as posterior orbital gyri, and medial orbital gyri, lateral orbital gyri. Okay, this is the orbital part. Coming to the tentorial part, you can see here on sulcus coming straight is called as median sulcus, also called as collateral sulcus, and here another sulcus called as lateral sulcus or temporo-occipital sulcus. Okay, so here backside we can see calcarean sulcus. Okay, between the calcarean sulcus and the median sulcus, this part is called lingula gyri. Continues anteriorly. So this lingula gyri continues anteriorly as a hippocampal gyrus. Okay, hippocampal gyrus. Sorry, it is para hippocampal gyrus. I will change it. Okay, it is already changed, but not it is para hippocampal gyri. Now this what I said, continuation anteriorly as para hippocampal gyri, which lingula gyri. This is para hippocampal gyri. The para hippocampal gyri hooks upward to form uncus. This is uncus. It hooks upward to form uncus. Okay, so above uncus there is an sulci, this gap called as rhinal sulcus. So here between the median sulcus or collateral sulcus and lateral sulcus or temporo-occipital sulcus, between these two sulcus there is an gyri called which is this median temporo-occipital gyri, because medial side. So lateral to the lateral sulcus or temporo-occipital sulcus is called lateral temporo-occipital gyri, as lateral to temporo-occipital sulcus. Here between the medial and lateral sulcus is called median temporo-occipital gyri. This part, this is lateral temporo-occipital gyri. So this finishes the sulcus and gyri of the brain. Hope you understood. Thank you.